talking to someone and I questioned, are we all represented? All groups represented? And here I'm speaking of those with, say, special needs. I'm seeing women. The Gen Zs we'll be talking about. But where are they looking at special disabilities, for example, as part of gender issues? Okay, thank you. So in this presentation I'll cover why this conversation now? Why is it now? How can women participate in the Synodal Church? What are some of the barriers? And then I'll look into women empowerment. I think this topic can be covered quite a bit when we talk of empowerment. The wellness and well-being of women. What can the church do? And conclusion. And here is why this conversation now. So the synodality as the local church to engage actively in listening and active discernment. So where are the women in this discernment process or discernment stage? What are some of the challenges that women are facing? So we still see women continue to face discrimination, exclusion from leadership, and violence despite their vital roles in the church, in the family, and in the community. But I always think that the church has a unique role. Looking at the church as the credible witness to the human dignity and shared responsibility for social transformation. So here is where I'm saying the church can do it better. As much as we look into law enforcement and all those collaboration with your other units that are involved in law enforcement, but we feel like the church is placed in a better position to ensure we can end discrimination and gender-related issues from the church level or from the church length. We have been called for using synodality as a framework to dialogue, to reflect. And here I'm also asking for the church to align the structures of the gospel, values of equity, inclusion, and justice. That's where we urge the church to go. Globally, the synodality has called the local church to include women in the discussion. At the same time, the society across Africa are grappling with the question of gender justice, violence, inclusion, and leadership. Where are women in the leadership position? I'll not really dwell on synodality. We heard about this yesterday through Alpha, Anthony, and of course all the previous speakers. So this was just looking back into the synodal process and what the final document is saying. But here I would want to underline one of the few concepts from the final document, and this is to say the discernment needs to continue. We need to continue the dialogue. We do not expect that things will change overnight. Yes, we have the framework. We need to start the dialogue. We need to make some steps. And we're not saying we wake up tomorrow and women are all over the places in the church. They're all over in the leadership position. But if we're intentional and continue to dialogue. Because what I'm saying, we cannot have this discussion while women are continually excluded in the discussion. We will not have this discussion adding value to the journey that we have started if women are not part of this discussion. If the decisions are made when women are not present, we cannot get there. So we've started the dialogue, and this has to continue until we get to the promised land where we are able to journey together. We are able to speak the same language. few points on the final document, and here I'm referring to section 60, appreciating the equality of the gifts that the Holy Spirit has given to both men and women. We've spoken about before, but I want to just emphasize. And here I'm saying the question is not about whether women are ready, but whether the church is ready to recognize, trust, and include what the Holy Spirit is already doing through you. From all the discussion, we've all recognized or appreciated that women were there, they journeyed with Jesus. We are the first witness of resurrection. And all over we are in both places of leadership. We've seen many women have done a lot of work in the church. Are we ready? And when I'm talking about the church, I'm not excluding women. Because it's both of us, and we have to make it happen. Not men alone, not clergy alone, but together. Where are women? How can we make it happen? We are ready. We say we already have many professors, women, deacons. We have catechists who are women. Where are we? Are we ready to acknowledge and appreciate their gift so that we can journey together? We do acknowledge that the question of women access to diaconal ministry remains open for discussion, but that doesn't stop us from continuing the dialogue as we journey together. For the interest of time, I'll continue. I guess I'm loud enough. Is that good enough? Okay. So I said we have a few important questions that I wanted us to look into and maybe guide our discussion. And the first one is to say, how can women participation become a driving force to disarm or to end violence and discrimination as part of the synodal discussion? In what ways can we or can the church be more effectively recognize and integrate the voices and the gift of women? How can we all collaborate, especially priests in the church hierarchy, to promote women's participation and nurture the church as a community for a shared mission, of a shared mission? The Synod places women at the heart of the seminars. This cannot be avoided. As I say, we cannot have discussion around women participation in the Synodal journey while they're already missing, or they're not included in the discussion. There are some historical barriers that contribute to the challenge that we currently face. And I've highlighted only three. The cultural norms and stereotypes. So leadership traditionally being seen as the main domain, and that still exists. Sometimes we feel like we are not able to fulfill that role, and that because of cultural norms that have been there. But also have limited access to education and networks. Professors talking about empowerment. How are women equally empowered to use their gift for the church mission? There is no conscious formation for empowerment. Maybe it's there, but it's unconscious. The ability for us to make decisions, the ability for us to own resources. We are not even there as the church. Violence and discrimination is still a big barrier. The World Union of Catholic Women Organization started a survey back in 2019. We're currently running a project called World Women Observatory. And through the survey that was conducted in Africa in 2023, we managed to reach out to 11,000 women, spoken to 110 experts across Africa, came out with the following statistics on gender violence. That 61% of the women we spoke to have suffered gender-based violence, which is verbal. 59% have faced economic violence, 56% emotional, 33% physical, and 19% or 20% sexual discrimination or sexual violence. So out of the question that we had around those aspects, those are the numbers. So how can we be part of this journey if we're still going through all this sort of violence on the background? And this is for both, not only for the, I'll say even for the land women. They still face these challenges. They still go through this violence. Yes, I'm employed. Yes, I have my employment contract and so on and so forth, but I cannot do anything with whatever that I'm earning. I don't have a say with whatever that I bring to the table. This is what some of the women are going through. And if we are not addressing those gaps, we still can't bring them to the table to be able to participate fully in the mission of the church. I also have listed some 4 common barriers, well known to many of us. And the first one is the glass ceiling. It's an invisible barrier that limits women advancing to top positions. Despite their qualifications, often due to gender bias, they have limited access to networks, and they are many times underrepresented in decision-making roles. We're talking about being victimized. When I stand here, I was like about saying I've been victimized by having a professor to speak after. So yesterday we heard about the victim syndrome, and here I'm saying imposter syndrome, where psychological pattern where competent women doubt their ability and fear being exposed to be able to contribute fully to the mission. Sometimes we need validation before we can act. There's also a lot of societal expectations. As a mother, there's a lot of expectations of what I can do and what I cannot do. The cultural norms and gender roles often expect women to prioritize family over career, discouraging ambition and leadership aspiration. And that's all make us feel like you don't qualify for this leadership role in the church. I just said about the culture where deep-rooted tradition in many societies where we view leadership as a male domain. Reinforcing stereotypes, limiting educational or professional opportunities for women, and resisting female authority. We need to overcome all these challenges or barriers to be able to allow women to fully contribute into the mission of the church through the synodal journey. How do we empower women? I'm saying here, empowered women in a closed system remain excluded. So yes, we see you have women who are empowered. They have women who are capable of doing different roles in the church, in the family, in the community. But does the system open for us to get into those roles? This is the question. So this is the challenge we need to overcome and progress. The intentionality, I think, is critical here. Whether the church is ready and intentional in allowing for empowered women to be part of the system and take on leadership roles. Intentionality for, and here for both make women, or rather late-age clergy, to overcome the social, emotional, political, economic, financial, and cultural barriers that hinder women's progress, ultimately striving for gender equality and improved quality of life for individuals, families, and communities. Increasing their access to education, economic opportunities, and financial resources, and any initiative that will take the women out of the shadow. In our project I was talking about World Women Observatory, we also focusing on empowering women, giving them a voice, and bring them to light. While we do all, we're also trying to look into ways we can give them access to financial resources so that they can do something, financial activities that will help them to come out of the shadow. Because without that, they still remain in the same challenge. We also need to look into exploring new forms of service and ministry in response to the pastoral needs for our time in a spirit of collaboration, differentiated co-responsibilities, looking into Final Document Section 79 to 108. It speaks about new service and ministry that women can fully participate in the same journey, intentionally looking into those possibilities. Talking of women empowerment again, we are looking into addressing the systemic barriers such as the restrictive cultural norms, limited land rights, male-dominated voice and permission. I highlighted in red the silent voice. And this is exactly the voice that the Synod is calling the church to hear. When we speak of women's empowerment, we are not speaking of giving them voice, because you already have a voice. We are speaking of listening to what has long been silent voice. Not because it was absent, but because it was unheard. And we're talking about leadership. And I think one of the things that leaders need to play when in a room like this is to be able to recognize and listen to the most silent voice in the room. So we feel like our voices have been there, but they are not heard. And this is what the Synodal Church is calling us, was calling the church to do. Right access to information to help them make decisions. Moving to wellness and well-being of women. And we feel like this is a precondition to help them to participate fully in the mission of the church. Recognizing women's dignity for their full participation. Wellness encompasses more than absence of diseases. It is a holistic pursuit of optimal health across physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, and environmental needs. Holistically, not in isolated manner, all together, wholesomely. The Bible already said it better, that we are equal, we've been gifted equally, and appreciating the gift of the Holy Spirit for both lay women, same as men. Different Christian traditions hold varied views on the practical expression of dignity, particularly regarding leadership roles, but all emphasize the fundamental value and inherent spiritual capacity of women to serve and participate in the life of the church. So there is a recognition. Why are we not making a step? The respect and honor that women deserve as God's creature, the roles that they are called to provide in the society. the acknowledgement that we are equally able to participate and offer what God has given us, God has gifted us. The ability to carry out these roles without any obstruction, unnecessary barrier, or another system. Why do we need to prove that God has gifted us equally? Why are we doubting the work of the Holy Spirit? So, the ability to use our voices and give the voice to other women and girls. The freedom to live with dignity and contribute to the society without abuse, without violence, and without discrimination. And what does the church have to do more or need to do more? And I underline the word more to appreciate that there is a lot that is already being done. But I think we are not doing enough. And that's what I'm trying to say here. Historically, Christian educators and subsequent church institutions have advanced the world of women's schooling, health centers, and social services. Today, there is a rising call within the church for greater inclusivity and co-responsibility, urging for shared leadership between clergy, ladies, and women. The synodal discussion already emphasized about listening, collaboration, and organized women's gift in shaping the church's mission and future. And I say I appreciate that in recent times, as we have seen, this past few days, the Universal Church has made some big steps in advancement of the women's participation in the church and leadership roles within the church. We need to sustain these efforts within our local church, same as it's happening in the Universal Church. We need to align the vision with our values. Professor was talking about strategic planning. Having strategies in our diocese, in our local church. And the question here is, do we have one? Do we plan? Because if there is no plan, then there will be no action. So the church needs to seek to ensure that the mission reflects the core gospel values of dignity, justice, and service by integrating these principles into leadership, community life, and evolving vision of the role of women in the church. So we have a framework, as I said earlier. The final document is our framework, but how do we implement it? It can't happen if we don't have a plan. I think the professor was asking me at some point, how many of us have read the documents? But that's where we start. My appreciation to the Tanzanian church that the final documents have been translated in Swahili, where everyone can read and understand it. As a starting point, some steps have been made. That at least we have a document that everyone can read and understand. What are we doing in our places, in our local church? This is what we are calling the church to do: promote inclusive and welcoming culture and encourage collaboration between men and women in the church. Some of these are already happening, but maybe they are not happening enough. When you're talking of gender violence, and this is for both men and women, and yesterday we were challenged that women have a role to play. We heard from Father Titus, 80%. Thank you, Prof. But again, given what we are going through, I spoke about gender-based violence, financial discrimination. So we end up having to do more in looking for financial resources to sustain in the family and forgot our sacred role of nurturing the family. How many of us, I'm a mother, I serve the church at different levels, but I have a family and I have a day job. All these are possible because behind me there is a support mechanism to make things happen at the family level. Maybe at the work level, I'm privileged that my employer can allow me. Sometimes I work from home so that I can look at the family. How many of us have that privilege? So if there is no support mechanism at home to allow me to do this other job I'm doing, the family suffers. And this is the question I keep been asking in many cases. How do you spare time for your family, for your husband, and still be able to do all these other roles? The church needs to do more. If I'm supposed to be attending a council meeting at the church, say from 6 to 8, this is the time I'm expected to be home, praying with my kids, and send them to bed. How can the church make a system where I feel included? And sometimes we do request, can we do this meeting during the day? And the answer is, we at work, have a day job, have this. So our role as the nurturer in the family somehow is silent. And therefore, we cannot participate in those decision-making organs just because there have not been a support system that allows us to participate. So we need to create a practical avenues where survivors of violence and discrimination can find home. The World Women Observatory, as I said, is doing a lot of work, but women alone cannot do this. As victims, we cannot address the challenge without men. Set up an independent avenue to handle cases of abuse, violence, and discrimination in the church. We've been talking about the example, a Synodality. So before pointing out to other communities, to the government system everywhere, what do we have in our church? And we also need to have support initiatives of women to end gender violence. We have proven cases where women can do a lot better. When I started my career 25 years ago, I was challenged. How can I prosper in my career? Given that at that point I also need to take care of the family. And I remember one of my supervisors saying, I'm a financial expert, that there's lots more trust in women who are financial experts. Why? Because before I do a dirty job, I think of my family, I think of my children, I think about the husband, I think about the community, they say this and that and that. So when I was being challenged that I'll need time off to go take care of the family, take care of the children, 9 months of pregnancy, 3 years of breastfeeding, questioning myself, how can I still prosper? But I still learned that the system equally recognizes and appreciates the quality of the work that is done by women. So here I'm saying there are cases for women leaders who have done a lot better. And here is the question to ask me as Evelyn and my fellow women who are here. Do with these qualities in today's women leadership roles? Improve financial performance, drive innovation, enhance governance, alignment of human markets, promote women leader advances, equality aspires future generation, reduce poverty, create a more inclusive and balanced society. We were talking about clericalism yesterday, like Alpha mentioned sometimes. all about clergy, because most of the time we point our fingers to clergy. But sometimes women are blocking fellow women to participate. There are cases, you go to offices, and it's a woman who is telling you cannot access the priest, you cannot access the bishop. So, are we emulating these qualities, I would say? Religious history and values support women's leadership through examples of influential women principles of justice and moral stewardship. We challenge outdated norms, honor traditional norms in the community, and support cultural movement towards equity and national development. So I'm posing a challenge to myself and my colleagues, women. Are we emulating these values? So that we can also prove that women can do it, we can do it together. These are some of the examples that we're looking at. We all know the lessons. Can we follow the sweets? Can we follow the steps of these great women who have done a lot in the mission of the church? Many years ago, this happened. Why can't it happen today? It's a proof that women can do and has done it historically. And these are some of the examples, there are many. Some of the current roles: theologians, educators, and lawyers, missionaries, leaders and religious congregations. Women are active in social justice, healthcare, church administration. Though not ordained, women hold key advisory roles in Vatican and many ministries worldwide. These cases are there, and they've proven that we can do it. Recent developments, corporate council steps, high-level appointments, women were included in the synodal discussion. It's still a discussion, but for me, it's not a big deal. We're told the discernment has to continue, the discussion will continue, but there's a lot we can do even without being deacons in the church. This is what we are calling for. There's no reason or impediment that should prevent women from carrying on the leadership roles in the church. What comes from the Holy Spirit cannot be stopped. This is not me, it's the final document. How do we disarm violence, discrimination to women participation in the Synodal Church? That's the questions I was saying you need to answer. Formation and accompaniment comes first. Challenge the systems that are root cause to both cause of violence and discrimination. We need to empower women as agents of change in political, economic, and social spheres. We need to call a society that is more inclusive, equitable, and stable. Empower survivors of violence and promote awareness and prevention of violence.
Next time, thanks.
The journey towards women's full participation in the church requires intentionality. I've mentioned 5 items there, but I would add one, which is accountability. So we all acknowledge, and the final document have acknowledged that there is a gap already. But do we have statistics how big the gap is? Because without data, we cannot make the point we are looking at. In our community, in our local church, in our parishes, in our diocese, and the National Laity Council, how many women present in those decision-making organs? We need to start now. We should not delay. We should stop delaying the inclusion. We shouldn't wait until everything is perfect. We make the small steps now. We need to listen deeply to the women's voice. As I said, it's not that the voice wasn't there, but sometimes it's never heard. We don't actively listen. We don't actively or deeply listen to the voice. And sometimes we listen to respond or to react. And here we're calling for global listening. Father Titus yesterday mentioned women are running to other churches, to Pentecostal churches. Why? Because we feel that is not. Intentionally invite women into leadership roles and leadership positions. And this is possible by creating an enabling environment, as I said. If the net is closed, it's difficult for us to participate. Conscious formation for empowerment of the environment approaches. So we need to continue to consciously empower women to be able to participate. I'm calling for each one of us to be a change agent. These steps can happen if both of us, me and you, are ready for the change. As I said, women are ready, but are we, together as the church, ready? I mentioned the examples. We just need to make a step. As I said, we need to have a plan in place without which we cannot move forward. Thanks for listening.